An Australia without rugby league is not Australia. Rugby league has been a fabric of our society for hundreds of years. It's people's escape, it's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of rugby league.
It has been those Australians who have worked hard every day. They have their dreams, they have their aspirations. These are the quiet Australians who have won a great victory tonight.
Yes, talking time in this second wave of COVID, time seems to be slowing down again, I've noticed, gentlemen. And today, Dennis Carnahan, sad but true. The golden era of Canberra Raiders in 2020 has come to an end. Chris Gale, you're riding pretty high, I gather.
We were up 34-0 at halftime against the beleaguered North Queensland Cowboys, Stephen.
Okay.
And I made the very, very sensible decision of driving to watch Parramatta Roosters at a friend's place so I could avoid the inevitable comeback
Right.
that would have taken years off my life.
Now, our guest today, and it's the first time we've had a guest with the quiet bunch, not the loud bunch at FBI Radio.
Well, Brendan Cowell, is he a guest?
Was he?
He's like a lost brother, isn't he?
Yes.
He wasn't actually with us. He was over in the UK.
True.
He was
Yes.
a virtual guest.
Exactly.
So in our inaugural
Patrick
quiet
Skene,
focus.
woohoo!
Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah. And the Big O is the book we'll be talking about specifically, but we'll have broader questions to ask. As in, you're a winner with the Tigers. Did the Dogs lose this week?
Yes.
They did. 50-50, and the Warriors. You're a man with a three-way bet. I'm trying to explain to people here.
Yes. I'm polygamous with my rugby league teams, and as we were saying earlier, there's a lot more of us out there than would admit to.
And it's a little bit like taking a sort of a punt on a place for a number of horses in the Melbourne Cup. You're going to get something somewhere, maybe a few dollars back.
Yeah, Patrick, you're wearing a Kummels jersey, is that right?
Yes. I'm a big fan of Papua New Guinea Rugby League. I think it's one of the most unique things we have in the game. And
Absolutely.
Can I just bring up something you're probably unaware of? Did you know that rugby league is the national sport of Papua New Guinea? This is something that
Tell me that, Chris.
most people are unaware of that. And it's never, ever brought up when it's covered by rugby league shows when they talk about Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, it gives me an advantage in those pub trivia nights.
Which we did very poorly at, as I recall, Chris, didn't we?
Oh, my goodness. We went to a fundraiser of some, and it was the most arcane information. Jeff Armstrong, who's a great sports publisher, and I don't know if you might have had some dealings with him, Patrick, he knew the answers. We knew none of them.
I'm proud of that.
Well, yeah.
Did he write the questions?
No, but it was very impressive.
Yes, indeed. Now, in this particular week of the resumption code of Rugby League 2020, it would appear that though the unifying forces of the Overlord and Rugby League as a game itself has not stopped from the rest of the country falling apart literally at the seams. Western Australia wants to secede. We can't fly to the Gold Coast, and there's a battle with Palaszczuk, of course. Freddie Fittler hasn't quite bridged that gap. And now, of course, Gladys has come out to say what, Chris?
Well, there's an announcement as we've gone to... You don't really go to air when you're on a podcast, do you?
As we've gone to pod.
As we've gone to cast. Gladys Berejiklian had this to say, and I can just imagine her on the steps of Macquarie Street.
Can you do an impersonation? You did some great ones last week, so I reckon she's going to sound a lot like Volandis and Buzz Rothfield.
Can you do a North Shore Stepford wife?
Does she sound like the Martian from Bugs Bunny?
Let's hear it.
Certainly do that. Okay. She's standing on the steps of Macquarie Street with her loud howler. I call on all organisations not to interact with citizens from Melbourne at this stage, Ms. Berejiklian said. So that's it. No interaction with anyone from Melbourne.
Yeah.
It was always going to come to this, wasn't it?
It's not like we hate Victoria as such. It's just Melbourne itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do they call it? The Prague of the South, the Paris of the South, the coffee shops and their graffiti and blah, 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 and the dirty old Yarra. So anybody around there, we've now got official approval not to...
So is country Victoria okay?
Well, no, it's
like
not.
The Grampians or no?
Well, I think Gladys has probably got aspirations for annexing that territory for herself.
Shifting the border.
If the virus is not there.
It's wherever they eat meat.
Yeah. and look, you know what they always say when they're talking about how great Melbourne is? They say, you know what, it's a cosmopolitan city. That is,
Do they?
That's actually code for it's cold.
Miserable.
But not as sort of refreshingly cold as Tasmania, without the art, without the culture. I mean, Tasmania's got something completely, haven't they?
Canberra's the one. I remember seeing an ad for the Army in Canberra, and it was advertised as cool and bracing.
Ooh, yeah, that's what
That was one of the that was one of the features.
Yeah.
It helps the brain thinking.
Yeah.
Cool air. That's why they put Parliament there.
How many years did you live there?
I served 22 years.
It's 22 years.
Yeah.
That's probably enough to be a Raiders fan. You're probably excused.
Born and
And
raised.
don't we know it, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this whole notion that I believe that, and I think we all understand that we're entering into the second wave, the feared second wave of the COVID virus is coming back to bite us. It's going to affect rugby league because we were hoping to flower under Volandis. It appears that that may well be prohibited. We're yet to see because it's a 2-week cycle. But in that process, of course, we had a round of footy, which is pretty damn good as far as I was concerned.
Is that right? Because you had a win.
Had a win.
Who'd you beat?
I don't even care. No, I know we built the perennial losers, the Titans, unfortunately.
So 3 of your last 4 wins have been against the Gold Coast Titans. They're certainly building something down Illawarra way, aren't they?
But isn't it perfect timing for the Roosters, isn't it? Aren't we looking forward to that murder? Bloodbath?
I, of course, have been nothing but supportive of Peter Volandis throughout this entire journey. But he did say, and I do like to point out, when the crisis, he said, when he first got the job, you'll only see me when there's a crisis. Otherwise, I'll be invisible. And fair enough, there was a crisis.
Yep.
COVID-19, there were some issues.
Yeah.
You would have thought that the crisis was over and he'd disappear. Well, all the evidence is he's not disappearing, so the crisis is still on. Is that correct?
Well, as I just mentioned, the second wave is happening.
Right.
So it's the second coming now of Volandis.
But he's also identified in the crisis of COVID, that crisis has ripped the blanket off, has ripped the Band-Aid off, and he's seen crisis after crisis after crisis. Hence, we've got the new penalty rule. Hence, we've got he's found a crisis in Campbelltown. He's had to move that. He's finding crises
For every
everywhere.
action, people. For
And
every
he's
action.
he's finding a crisis with the bunker. There's crises everywhere.
And what's the crisis at Campbelltown?
Oh, it's a cow paddock.
It's a cow paddock.
It's a cow paddock.
He's the ultimate fireman, isn't he? Putting out little fires everywhere.
And
this, big ones.
And this was no more evident than, Patrick, I don't know if you caught last night, 100% footy, you'd be an avid watcher, I'm sure.
Indeed.
Peter Volandis was on for the entire episode. Like, you can imagine sort of wanting to get a sort
So
of
is he a panellist or is
he became Patrick Skene style. He became a panellist overnight. So you weren't getting a diverse views of rugby league, but you were certainly getting a view. And at one stage, he described Gus Gould as his knowledge of rugby league was encyclopedia. In fact, he called him Gus Google, and he was just throwing down cards saying this is where we're going, right? One of the things that I think is directly pertinent to Berejiklian's announcement today is the Melbourne Storms, because of issues associated with COVID and some disasters with the other code. I can't even remember what it's called. The Storms have been relocated from Melbourne to Sydney.
Is this the end of the storm?
I think it is. Well, as we know it.
Yep.
And at another time, he was talking about that there has to be a 17th team in Brisbane. He says, because I don't want to take rugby league to AFL strongholds.
Rusted on some
AFL supporters, right?
And has there not been discussions about Brisbane now, rugby league in shaky ground, because both the Suns and the Gold Coast, where obviously the Titans are doing well,
Yeah, doing fantastic.
and something about there's another code team in
Because the
Brisbane.
Suns had a win.
Did they?
Yeah,
Yes.
they've had a couple, and he said, I don't want to cannibalise the Broncos or the
Titans, they're called.
But it's hard to remember, isn't it? Hang on. Just
ask Stephen.
But I can sort of see, and this is a little expression I came up with a few years ago. I patented it. It's called,
Can't wait.
You can kill 2 birds with one stone.
Can you just? Yeah.
You ostensibly get the Storms out to Sydney. Now, they're either going to be staying at the Manly Novotel or the Homebush Pullman.
Right.
Both those hotels, be warned, you'll be like cruise ships.
Okay.
I mean, people will not
But
want to stay there in
neither
the
are
future.
directly near one of the grounds at this point.
The Pullman's near the Olympic Stadium.
But will that be used?
Well, they just jumped on Cogra, and Cogra was nowhere near match ready, so
Yes.
they may as well.
I heard it's the Jolly Night Motel in Liverpool for the siege mentality.
Oh, that'd be
They're taking over the whole thing. Yeah.
Bellamy would love that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe catch the drive-in down there.
So not Albury Wodonga?
No. I think Sydney is just a smoke screen.
That's where the action is.
It's
Well,
a smoke
because you know what
screen.
happened last time?
It's a
I
holding
tried to
thing.
go to Albury Wodonga, and the council voted them out.
So, look, as one of our greats has said, if you're not living in Sydney, you're not truly living, correct?
It's a holding pen.
Yeah.
As soon as Palaszczuk throws open the borders,
Yes.
they're saying the Storms might play a game for the faithful up at the Sunshine Coast where their feeder team is. They are the new Brisbane team. It's the Brisbane Storms, and the AFL stronghold of Melbourne has won.
Yeah.
And let's face it, there will be no economic activity from outside Victoria in the next 5 years. They've lost the COVID war, and we're good on Berejiklian
for
for getting us the hell out of there.
So will they be called the Melbourne Storm playing out of Queensland?
No,
they just changed the name. Just
can you imagine the poetry, the art of the Sunshine Storms?
Yes,
Because that's Queensland.
That's
what it is. We watch the lightning crack over the cane fields.
Yes.
That's Queensland.
Exactly.
The Sunshine Storms.
Okay, so not 6 games in Melbourne, 6 games on the Sunshine.
No. Beautiful one day, natural disaster.
And you mentioned, if I could go back, you mentioned that the love of Gus Gould from the Overlord.
Yes.
We might have all seen Gus Gould's article on the weekend, things that he would change about rugby league, and gee whiz, that was riveting, wasn't it? It just kept going. I kept scrolling and so I say, has he said that already? Has he said that already? You know.
I always saw, sorry, Patrick.
He's inventing a new game, effectively.
Of course he is, and he's been waiting forever for it, and he was always right. You know.
I always thought checkbook journalism was where you paid money to get people to give interviews, but apparently checkbook journalism is just say, I have an open checkbook and this is what I would do, and that was the Gould mantra. And it was
ideas. Saying he's paying people to listen to him. About.
He's an ideas factory, and when pressed by no greater a scribe than Danny Weidler, who actually liked Vossi's tweet about Fire Up last week, so hello, Danny.
We've always loved Danny Weidler, you know that, since 2004 on FBI.
He asked the searching question to Peter V'landys, when is Gus Gould going to be appointed head of football operations for the NRL? And he goes, well, I can't talk about that. It's commercial in confidence.
Right.
Wow.
Abdo's sweating.
Gould then said something about, Danny Weidler, what are you doing? I'll take you out to the car park. But we don't.
The car park.
We don't advocate violence on this show.
Can I read? This is my favourite piece of Gus Gould's poetry recently. Hates everyone. Hates the world. Angry man. Who's he talking about?
And who
Ricky
wrote that?
Stewart.
Oh,
That's Gus Gould.
Ricky Stewart.
Isn't that beautiful poetry?
It's haiku.
It's lovely.
Interesting for me is we haven't heard, from the last days of Greenberg to the first days of Abdo, we haven't heard a word from the CEO in eight or 10 weeks.
Didn't he appear somewhere? He appeared on a TV show.
Abdo?
He appeared on Q&A.
He was on Q&A last
week.
week.
On the ABC.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the first time I'd seen him in action.
But there's no league fans watching that. I'm talking for the great unwashed. We haven't seen him.
No.
Good point.
Who does watch it?
They had Shani Layton, Brendan Gale, and Tracy Holmes. You're right. No rugby league fan really watching it.
Nada. So we haven't heard. So V'landys may be continuing on, and we just don't know where he lands. Is he Lee Kuan Yew, benevolent dictator, or Kim Jong Un?
So is he still officially interim?
Is he
Abdo?
both?
Abdo interim?
Abdo's interim.
Yep.
V'landys is chair,
Yeah.
but he says, you'll see me disappear in the crisis. I do feel that this is a fairly straightforward play.
Mandrake the magician style.
Fairly straightforward play that he's read the tea leaves. Australia will be a republic, and he will be our first president.
Wow.
I think
it's a logical step.
It
You
seems-
see the career path is linear.
But like I'm actually just started watching the Clinton affair.
But to be that, do you need the
Clinton affair.
approval of all the states? Do you need Victoria, West Australia, Queensland to
Well-
be loved by all?
Well, I just watched Mrs. America about the ratification of the ERA, and they didn't need all the states to ratify that, and they didn't ever ratify that.
No.
So I think as long as you've got
He's got
Palaszczuk and Berejiklian on side,
Yeah. It's
probably
politics.
throw in Tasmania. Anyone who can name the Premier of Tasmania, go to the head of the class. Right? Dennis is searching his mind. So he wants to be president.
It's Captain Mona, isn't it?
But I'm watching the Clinton affair, and it's not looking good for Bill in this documentary. Presidents appear to be corrupt in some way, shape, or form, and I'm not saying that Peter V'landys is corrupt.
All right.
But simply, he is, despite some commentary that it was a combination of the likes of Annesley and Pearce who came up with the 6-tackle set restart rule.
The cat.
Yeah. Roy Masters has revealed in the paper today that there's a ever-increasing gap between the haves and the have-nots and the Roosters, at the head of the queue. He's basically said that this 6 set restart rule has basically guaranteed the Roosters a third premiership. We've pointed out for some time, home is where the heart is. Both Peter V'landys and Nick Politis.
Kithara. It's a Greek cabal, a conspiracy theory.
Peter V'landys says, Nick, I will give you a third premiership by changing the rules capriciously mid-competition overnight.
Is that a Greek word?
In exchange for your support and a company car
Right.
as the first president of the Republic of Australia.
A jet?
And then you know what's happened? Yeah.
Private jet, exactly.
jet.
Nick, again, politest. Sorry,
Nick has gone.
Volandis was on TV last night.
I see your car. I'll raise you a jet.
He says, what we've got to do in rugby league is we've got to maximise the financial flexibility of the clubs, and we have to buy income-generating assets.
Yeah.
Well, the only asset he's talked about buying is a jet.
Yes.
Which will be of no use to these clubs because you don't need to get to Melbourne anymore. He'll take it off the hands of the NRL for a song, put his face on it.
Yes.
It's what do they call it? Air Force One.
Yeah. Well, like Elvis, TCB.
But didn't he? Isn't he got an offer fishing out for Super League in England at the moment?
Yes, that's on the Gould again says you've got to go in, buy Super League.
Yeah. Is that what James Green's doing? He's in a mystery?
He's the new NRL ambassador to the Super League.
Smoothie the feathers over there? Because he's a pretty good talker.
Because let's face it, Gould and Volandis ring up and say, James, look, you're playing with the Dragons, they're going nowhere.
Yeah.
right.
We've got a bigger job for you.
We've got something more.
You've got skills, buddy.
Future of the game. and he goes, you're giving me a sense of purpose.
Yes.
And off he goes.
He's certainly got a diplomatic air, hasn't he?
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
Because he'll be able to go and negotiate with Super League,
Yeah.
and he won't get into any finger pointing because he'll just have the crook knuckle. and the
They'll
English,
love him.
the English will appreciate
Of course,
that. You're
yeah.
one of us.
Our boy's coming home.
Yeah, but-
He's representing what we... Okay, we'll deal with it. Yeah, but we love you, James. Let's do it.
It'd be like one of those peppercorn deals. Like they'll sell the Super League NRL for £1, and we're on our way.
You're right, though, Chris. This set restart, I still prefer 6 again. There's something...
Just the name.
The name, yes.
Yep.
It's something fishy about it, given that, first of all, we noted that you cannot find any information. There's no data, statistics, nothing anywhere on any of the sites. You say that they do it live on the run on Fox Sport. If you don't happen to watch that, or if you don't get your pen and paper out and make a note of it.
Again, the conspiracy, you have to pay Rupert. If you're not paying Rupert, you can't see it.
Exactly.
If you want to see the set restart numbers...
And no post
pay
record.
Rupert.
No, you can't look it up anywhere and find out who are the beneficiaries of this call.
Fox does it on the run when it suits
No, they
them.
don't post those.
No.
Yeah.
And then when, and again, I don't say Channel 9 are apologists for the NRL.
It's a game of stats, right? It's a game of analytics,
but they
data.
They talk about rule changes since round 3.
Yes.
The ball's in play more, there are more possessions, but they said penalties have dropped from 14 to 10,
Yeah.
and they don't mention any statistics about the set restarts.
one.
I think only information that supports the regime will be released.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, this
And
is
true speak.
Is
I
this
think
not
that's
the
called.
biggest change in rugby league for what? 40 years?
Someone said since unlimited tackle. What do you think?
I'd have to say it has completely changed the game, and just seeing Melbourne Storm's jiu-jitsu trainer on JobKeeper.
Yeah,
That's enough. That's enough for me.
that was a telltale sign.
And who would you say, Dennis, are the beneficiaries of this 6 again at this point in time?
Well, it seems from the hidden... If we could see the statistics...
Yes. But your gut instinct, you're there at the game.
My
You
gut
are there.
instinct, at the game, watching beneficiaries, the politest... What
Just
do
the
they call
politest mob.
The Roosters, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The Kithera Roosters.
The Kithera Roosters.
I like to watch trends, and certainly one of the most overused words in the lexicon of rugby league commentators at the moment is resilient. Everyone's resilient, and
Oh, we
how's
like
their
that.
resilience?
You know what I hate? Agile. Have I told you that?
Nimble.
Nimble. You've got to be nimble in COVID.
Pivot. Gotta pivot.
I'm pivoted. Yeah. I don't give a shit. I said that one day and that another day.
Have we forgotten unprecedented?
Uncharted waters.
The new normal.
Oh, no, kill me now.
But the new expression that's everyone's battling for is to try and put the label on have most benefited from the 6 again rule, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And seriously, one of the luminaries at Fox on the weekend said, there's no doubt in my mind the person who's most benefited from the new rule is Jake Friend.
Jake Friend's personally benefited.
Hang on.
Personally benefited most.
But he's a Kithera Rooster.
Yes.
But
Okay.
I'd accept Teddy Tedesco because he
Yes.
seems to be running channels, etc. But I don't see Jake Friend as a speedster Damien Cook style.
Chris well, okay. He is a dummy half player. They're the ones that should benefit, correct?
Could
Damien
it be
Cook
that he's a
style.
dud, slow dummy half player?
He's
By
a
the way,
dud, Damien Cook. I'll give you that.
By the way, while we're on Damien Cook, this is something you may not know, but do you know he's a former beach sprinter?
Is that right, Chris? He's pretty fast off the spot, is he?
But we were talking,
I've learned
speaking
so
of
much
Jake
today.
Friend,
Yeah.
we talk about real rule changes we want to, and we talk about discipline in the modern game. What annoys you about Jake Friend?
Well, I get obsessed, as you know, Chris, and certain things really start to bug me. They get under my skin, they irritate me, and one of those is the dummy half salute. Can anybody see that on television, right? And like, oh, come on, ref. And obviously it's the penalty puller. That's the action. The charade is, didn't you see what they're doing? They're slowing us down.
That's the statistic you want. Not just the 6 agains.
Yeah. The
not
Jake
just
Friend.
the penalties, but the ratio, the success rate of flapping arms to penalties
We
drawn.
call it the slow the tackle, 2 arms in the air frustration gesture.
Yes. So how many of those are done and how many penalties are earned?
And he's not just a master. I don't think he can help the damn thing. He's just automatic. It's automatic. It's automatic. It's automatic.
The thing is, he's actually born Raiders fan. He just wants to he can't help himself.
It's the clap. Yeah. Chris, would you agree with me?
Well, Robbie Farah, his statistic is 0%.
He was pretty good.
Like, he never got it. And there's, again, Roy Masters is suggesting now referees in this new rule where they seem to be able to do things on the run and randomly are like choreographers. And to them, I think what they see, and
Would you say Graham Murphy, or where would you go with this?
I'm more a Robert Helpman guy.
Robert Helpman, you're old school, are you?
Yeah.
On the run, though, choreographers normally plan things. That's what a choreography is planned.
Yes. Yeah, but
So you're saying
this is modern dance,
they're
Dennis.
adapting, they're being agile.
Yeah.
This is kinetic.
Pivoting, and they're adapting.
But
They're very nimble.
But
they're
there are
adapting the choreography
there
as
are
they go.
choreographed elements into it, right? In other words, the referee understands if they've done a couple of set restarts and they don't call it, they'll get.
Yeah. Because
Like
you get the, like the captain and coach, you get the choreographer dancer, and they're doing freestyle jazz, and they're on the run rebooting the choreography.
Jazz hands.
You don't tell me the Sutton brothers aren't planning this
I don't
every
like
weekend.
that. Yeah. Jake, Jazz Hands friend.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great name for him.
If anyone's enjoying the death of the block play, it's the referees.
But I throw down the gauntlet now to the Overlord to declare transparency on these numbers and who's benefiting, because I do believe, watching the game of the night with Para, now I'm not a Para fan, I generally...
Who is?
If any of you want to win some money in rugby league, ring me before a game and say, who are you actually hoping wins? And you don't put your money on them, all right? Because I always go for the underdog. So I went for Para the other night, okay? Now, I would have
Who
to
did
say...
you go for, Raiders Manly?
I went for Manly. I did like Canberra last year. I switched and fiddled. Yeah. But having said that, if, for example, the Roosters were playing Melbourne, I would go for the Roosters because I don't like Melbourne.
Yep.
Now, we all play those sort of instinctive things.
Yep.
So I was watching the other night and thinking, yes, the Roosters are very good. Very, very good. They're very fast. They're very confident. They don't drop balls. They virtually are perfect all the way. But I would say to you that, like the penalty that allows the try to occur, if you get the penalty and you get the set restart, you're home and hosed. Right. And I do believe that the Roosters were the beneficiary on last week's game, and therefore Parramatta were just hanging in there by their life.
The change in the rules...
Am I wrong here? Am I biased?
I think you're biased towards the underdog, which is
Yes,
a humanitarian
a
approach
rugby
to rugby
league instinct,
league.
right?
Yes. The game was forged for underdogs, so you're in alignment with the original 22-minute Huddersfield.
Yeah.
So Patrick, you're suggesting that Stephen is a communist up against the fascist regime of the NRL, which controls information of ministry style.
And then you've got the ultimate capitalist beast, which is Politis machine.
Which is the Roosters.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
right.
it's really Hegel's dialectic writ large yet again.
21st century counting, is it?
Yeah.
Tearing down the statues.
I've noticed that, look, you guys want to get Dally M? You want to take him down? Anybody?
I was going to say, I'll lead the charge on Wally Lewis, which might take us to the next section we discuss
Yeah.
Olsen Filipaina.
Don't you mean Boyd Corder's got a statue there, has he?
Not yet.
Because I bet it doesn't talk.
Smoking Joe Kilroy, he's safe.
Yes, yeah.
And it's got a big cleft in the chin, that one of Boyd.
Yes, I know. It took him weeks. I think that's it. Let's have a break now.
Let's
We'll come
throw
back
to a
and
break.
talk about the Big O with our very special guest Patrick in just a moment.
Get up, go through.
Here's Kiri to Manua. He's lost the ball. Parramatta come up with it.
Oh, Benson.
And yes, no advantage.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh. It's all here. It's very raw. Who knew Tupanua could speak French? Jennings.
I'll tell you what he is, Joey. He's a real man. That's the thing. Adam Fanua-Blake is a real man. It's the best way to describe him.
The Quiet Australians have had a little quiet word in our ear, and they said, enough from you guys. Let's hear somebody who knows about rugby league. And Patrick Skene is here with us. He's going to talk about the Big O. Chris, would you like to kick off the first question?
Certainly, Patrick, it's so unusual for us to have authors in the Fire Up universe because none of us have even written in, like a pamphlet, I think, on anything.
Oh, yeah, I've written like DL size.
Yeah, right.
Press releases are hard, Chris.
You're the oral tradition.
Yeah.
Now, the book is The Big O, Pacific Revolution Pioneer. First of all, did you consider calling it The Story of O at any particular point in time?
No, I'm old enough to remember that, and the reading market is old enough to remember that, and we don't want to distract from the core issues.
It's about the great Olsen Filipaina, but before we dive in, tell us a bit about yourself. Is this your first book? What's your background? What's your connection to rugby league?
Always been a rugby league fan, was brought up on the hill at Leichhardt Oval.
Yes.
My grandmother lived in Lilyfield, so walking down there, buying a hot dog, being part of the tribe.
You can't pull that out of your DNA, can you?
No.
What's the name of the guy? Hot doggy, get your hot doggy. I love him.
Yeah, 42 years he's been down
Unbelievable.
42. That's an
And that just represented a continuity piece for myself and my father. And I remember sliding on a cardboard box down the back of the hill there. It was
lovely.
It was amazing. And also...
What years are we talking here?
We're talking 81 to 85.
Okay, yeah.
Then he got too big for the cardboard.
Yes. And then I went straight to catch and kiss. Always slowed down strategically.
And then finding the half-empty bottles of beer.
yes.
I'm gonna have to jump in because I've only had the opportunity to read the first part of the book, and I did love that the air was larded. With the smell of hot dogs. You talk about your hot doggies.
Yeah.
I have never heard of air being lard. Like I understand you lard your pan or you might lard, but the idea of air being lard, this is literary genius. Where does this come from?
Raymond Chandler. I had to read him in school, and he once said the air was larded with the smell of clawing orchids.
Whoa!
And I thought,
take hot dogs.
Snaffle that one.
The little things you remember from high school.
Until Raymond's publisher.
I just read Gal's autobiography, and I think he said something like that. I could be mistaken.
He was larding a different part of his body.
And so, rugby league fan, and then what's been your involvement in the game?
Always been a rugby league fan, and started writing for The Guardian in 2014.
A classic rugby league rag, correct?
Surprisingly, in England it is.
In England,
it originated in Manchester, right in the heart of rugby league country. So it's always had a little soft spot for league as a northern rag.
Right. But you wrote for the Australian
version of The Guardian, and I was there's a segment called The Forgotten Stories.
So you didn't hide your love, your secret?
No. I was out with it, but I wrote on rugby union. I wrote on a whole range of different sports. Who's interesting in rugby union? It's Cecil Romali is the first Aboriginal wallaby.
Right.
1938.
Great name, Cecil.
Who was 20 years old, weighed 66 kilos. Played 2 tests against the All Blacks, got knocked out twice from a place called Mungandai, half Punjabi, half Aboriginal. So it's all the diversity that's ever had in rugby union.
Yeah.
Well, we doff our hat to rugby union.
And how's this for a funny story? I went on to rugby.com.au, and they've always been celebrating Lloyd McDermott as their first Aboriginal Wallaby. So my article had to correct the record.
Right.
And there's not that many Aboriginals
That
that played
felt good,
rugby.
I bet.
You think they could get them right? Well,
I would have said Lloyd McDermott, and then there's focus with Andrew Walker, Kurtley Beale. Hang on, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have that knowledge.
but one of the I've been a listener for many years, and I very much enjoy the wax you guys give rugby union. It gave me permission to pile in
the pile on
book as well, and I've always said
we often say that.
Did you just imply long-time listener, first-time visitor?
Yes.
And look, our greatest ever guest, of course, was Peter Fitzsimons.
Yep.
Who, as we all recall, beautifully proceeded to order his bacon and eggs or his toasted sandwich whilst he was not really doing an interview at all and couldn't even remember what he was talking to or who he was talking to.
I was a listener at that particular phase of the show, and he was in a cafe, and you just hear, yeah, Vegemite, thanks, not too much butter, and then he'd go back to, and you just go,
what are you guys here? Who? What?
Yeah.
You know.
He's actually a massive fan of rugby league. And I came across my desk a few weeks ago a player profile from when he played for the Manly Marlins, hadn't even started playing for the Wallabies. And his favourite TV show, when they list all the various things, his favourite TV show was ABC Rugby League Match of the Day.
Yeah,
so he's always loved rugby league, like all rugby union, their secret favourite love is rugby league.
You're saying he was an Alan Marks fan, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
John O'Reilly.
He's part of that North Shore, keep it on the down low. After 5 wines, you'll sheepishly admit
I'm telling you,
you're a Les Kiss fan.
I'm telling you, you're not going to write a biography of Peter Fitzsimons called Australian Rugby League Pioneer, are you, Patrick?
No.
So let's look at the subject. Is this your first book?
Yes.
Yeah. Olsen Filipaina, Why Olsen?
Olsen, I believe, is the best way to tell the story of the Pacific Revolution, which started when Olsen joined the New South Wales Rugby League at the time.
What year are we talking now?
1980.
Okay.
There were 4 players. We were 5 years out of the White Australia policy.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was no diversity. Surprisingly, Balmain was the multicultural team.
Yep.
It had Serbians,
In
Aboriginal,
the West,
Maori.
does sort of make sense, though.
Yeah. He joined the most multicultural team, and they had the first black backline, as they called it, where Percy Knight would give it out to Olsen, who would give it out to, or Lloyd Martin, who'd then give it out to Olsen, who was playing inside centre, and then Larry Coral would come in. So,
Is the curve of Polynesian players still rising?
the prediction is, by looking at junior reps, that it will be 60% by 2027.
And what is it now?
48.
48%. Wow.
And
okay.
And plus Indigenous now at 60% of the total player base is regional Indigenous.
What's the future for the Rangers?
The future of the Rangers are quotas.
Yeah, quoted.
And country footy and Canberra style importing the Poms.
Can I say, Dennis's great mate, Corey Horsburgh, who missed last week's game against the Tigers because he ate 6-day-old sausages. It's the unseen impact of the COVID impact as nutrition practices of rugby league players. He has red hair, so Corey Parker, of course, described him on the weekend in the Manly game as a firebrand.
Firebrand. Yeah, nice way to put it.
So touching on that, he came to Balmain. He's one of 4 Polynesian players in the league. Why did he come to Balmain?
He didn't want to come to Balmain at all. He didn't want to come to Australia. On 1978 tour, he had come here and starred for New Zealand, but heard a lot of racism. And one comment he said to me was, people talk to you and say things as if you don't understand, like English was his second language.
Right.
And he found that casual racism very insulting.
Wow.
Loved being in New Zealand. Loved being by his mother's side. He's
His mum sounds fantastic.
the first of the rugby league mummies boys. And there's one mention in there of there's still a Warriors player who sleeps in the same bedroom as his grandmother.
Yeah.
And he's not teased about it at all.
Sure.
The other players are quite jealous, and that's just a little example of cultural contrast.
Yeah. Okay.
And but it was like, in order to earn money for his family, that was the opportunity. Was that how did it?
He'd gotten too big for the Fox Memorial Cup in New Zealand.
Right.
He had terrorised them for.
But were there bids for his talent?
Since 1978, there had been every year people.
So the numbers were rising.
Keith Giddoes from the Balmain Tigers went across to New Zealand and met his mother eyeball to eyeball, which is the Māori way.
Yeah.
And that impressed the parents so much that they decided to go across.
Mm.
And also, sorry.
Do any other members of the family come with him?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Even his girlfriend.
She stayed there for the first year and a half. She stayed in New Zealand.
Probably a difficult time.
Terrible time for him. He suffered the first year under Dennis Tuddy. He had a great time because Dennis Tuddy, interestingly enough, used to go to New Zealand in the off season to work in the meatworks, some holiday.
What's extra cash?
Because in the meatworks they used to feed them massive meals, and Dennis Tuddy would go over there to put on weight, and Artie Beetson would go there to put on weight. Tuddy and Beetson were friends.
Gee, that sells rugby league, doesn't it? Nothing else does.
Dennis Tuddy is another discussion. He's such a hero. But what you're alluding to there, of course, I think then Frank Stanton became coach. And talk a little bit about that, because I found it uncomfortable reading as a Balmain supporter about, as you referred to, the casual racism, which would be, you would imagine crowd opponents, but potentially almost within the team.
Within the team. Reserve graders would try and injure Olsen at training. There was one time, and legal had to remove this from the book, but an Australian international...
Well, no one's listening to this, so...
This is the one bit they might listen to. An Australian international, Olsen and his partner outside the change rooms, and he heard them yell out, "Who does this black C think he is taking one of our spots?"
Cool.
So there was a real feeling of almost like foreign workers coming in to take Aussie jobs back then. It was incredibly parochial. And as a contrast to that, he had Wayne Wigham and Blocker Roach and Wayne Pearce, who were best mates and never said a bad word to him, and provided a layer of protection for him. So
did it bring up aggression in him?
It would go two ways. They said sometimes people would say racist stuff to him on the field, and Frank Stanton joked one time that maybe we should pay someone to say something racist to Olsen to fire him up, because sometimes he would get, and sometimes they said his body language would just slump. Yeah. Something we didn't really know then that we know now is to insult a Polynesian either messing up their name really badly or racism. It really wounds them in a deep way. It's like insulting your grandparents, and there's a whole. We are so immune from abuse here. It's just such a stock standard part of Australian culture.
Because I noticed, I like I said, I haven't read the book. I'm going to, and so should you. But I heard him interviewed. I heard Olsen interviewed on ABC Queensland, and he was saying he used to cop it from the crowd so much, and he was famous for having those massive quads. These were the biggest quads I think that have been in league, and he was a toe poker, and he chose to take one step to kick the goals, whereas most people, that was very unstandard. He could because of his strength, but he did it because it gave the crowd less opportunity to yell racist abuse at him.
To abuse him.
And that's why he chose it.
Yep.
And he said, if someone gave me racist abuse, never bite back, never do anything, just look them in the eye. When they turn around, look at their number, hit them real hard next time.
Can I just say that, though, going back in time in Australia, it was a standard practice for everybody to have a crack at everybody.
Yep.
Like, it was a toughening up. It was a sort of show that you're a man, and regardless whether you were Irish Catholic or Protty, or if you were Indigenous or whatever. That was a general consensus that you could have a go, and you weren't showing disrespect. You were just being mutually disrespectful as such, and it was a standard practice. I think it's a different culture, nearly, wasn't it?
I think there's part of that, and there's part of not knowing. You would say whatever.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, by the way.
You would say whatever you had to put your opponent off.
Yeah,
that's the way it was, right. And we have a quite a vindictive culture like that, and that's one thing I've loved that the Polynesians have brought to the game, and the Melanesians is it's played with a smile. The love-ins that happen after games would never have happened. There was no chance of catching COVID after a game in the old days. It was like, I'll see you behind the sheds and aggro.
Except the showers, maybe.
I mean, if you'd said to
those communal baths,
if you'd said to hardcore fans 30 years ago that rugby league opposing players will be holding hands and singing songs, looking into each other's eyes. Yes, I'm not sure how Noel Kelly would have taken that.
That sort of takes into I mean, as I said, I was uncomfortable as a Balmain supporter to come to a realisation how widespread it is, and it was easy to be oblivious to it to a degree.
I'll tell you, uncomfortable is having to call Frank Stanton on the phone and go through some of these accusations that came his way, which he flat battered everything as you would expect.
And I had a chance to chat to Patrick about the book after I read it, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but you said you were wondering about how the book reflected for Frank. And I said, look, I think he's quoted extensively. I think he had a really good opportunity to respond. But on the football side, I think you suggested he was more emblematic of a broader issue, that people... There's a cliche about Olsen, that he put on the Kiwi jumper and he grew a leg, right? Now, in Craig Young's case with the Australian jumper, that was a fact, right? But but in relation to Olsen, your thesis is it was that he was allowed to play the way he could play, that he had a coach in Graham Lowe who understood how to coach Olsen, and that the Sydney-based coaches were all about structure. In other words, you take all your talent and you put them into your mould rather than building something out of the variety of talents that you have. Is that sort of kind of fair?
It's the one-size-fits-all.
Yep.
So the Australian coaches, it goes deeper to our... Why is Australia different to England and other countries? It's an egalitarian country. If you try and hop in front of the line at an airport or a pool, at a pool table or a taxi queue, you are guaranteed a broken nose.
Mount Splashmore.
And in this country, no one gets special treatment. That was the Australian way. So we're coming out of that, 75 years of that, to now it's personalised man management. Everybody has something customised. They're treated like assets.
Yeah. Can I also bring in the fact that earlier than that period, that when players had to play for their region, and the tribalism was really, really rife, and that suddenly an outsider's coming in, you can understand why perhaps they were viewed as a gun for hire and what are you doing here type thing. And I personally, for many years, hated the fact that teams would get on like mates after a game when I expected them to hate the other team like I hated the other team. Why would you betray me as a fan, was the point of view?
We're talking... Australia was emotionally constipated at the time. I mean, this book is
Me
about...
too.
It's about...
Still.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. Well, you should see and watch a Melbourne game.
We thrive on it.
It's like black sets for you. We were all... outside the great Jack Gibson, they say Jack Gibson was the true player ahead of his... true coach ahead of his time.
That mean coat said it all.
Yep. But, yeah, the fur coat. And it was... a time when Australian coaches, now it's about mutual disclosure sections, bonding, crying. that was unheard of back in the day, but that's what Graham Lowe would use to bring out the best of the Kiwi players. He would get them all to get up and talk about their fears, encouraging them to cry if they won, and that's something that bonded these players, because you get five Kiwis would be playing in England, 5 would be playing in New Zealand on long grass paddocks, and 5 would be down here. He'd have 10 days to blend them together, and he'd be able to do that. But Australian coaches wouldn't do that. The enigma side of it, I've been through every big league and rugby league week from 1978 to 1990, every single one, week after week, reading every match report for research for this, hundreds of hours. And Olsen got dropped. I found out Olsen got dropped on many times. It wasn't for form. He had very stubborn coaches who said you didn't wear the polo, or one famous day on Easter Monday 1983 where he turned up for the game at Cogra Oval 10 minutes before the game started, still in his Garbo gear. And Frank Stanton was just trying to introduce the new polo, and everyone looked professional. And he said, "Where have you been, Olsen?" And he said, "I was on the Garbo run. Today we get triple time."
Yeah.
And it's just for him, it was more money to send back to his family than he was going to earn. So,
and that is one of the big traits, isn't it? That the money goes, particularly with the Pacific Islanders, the money goes back to the family, correct?
Yes. And it's the saddest part of the story that all of the Olsen's money that he sent back, and Gary Freeman once joked that he only ever saw Olsen in one pair of shorts, and he never bought new clothes. Every single cent he could save would go. He loved his mother so much, but the money would go back through the father. The father had a gambling habit and squandered every cent of it. So Olsen is held up now as the cautionary tale of the guy that earned pretty good money during his career. And this Polynesian system, extended family system, where the money is evenly distributed amongst the family, it is a really beautiful working form of socialism. And they always joke that there's not a single homeless person in Samoa or hungry person in Samoa.
Not too dissimilar to say, like Mundine has spent most of his boxing profits on the brothers, the sisters, the cousins, the families.
The family. But if you have one chink in the armour, one part of the chain can let everybody down. And that was the case with Olsen's father, and that's quite sad. So I'm 50-50 partners with Olsen in the book, and he's going to get hopefully a nice little check.
Right, we're going to plug it.
100% we are. And we'll put up information on our Facebook page, and we'll tweet some of this vision and things. A couple of other things, stories from Olsen. I mean, we love a story against the Roosters. Can you just quickly take us through when Olsen was encouraged to join the Eastern Suburbs Roosters?
Well, there's a whole chapter on that. Olsen got to the end of his Balmain times where he'd played quite a bit in reserve grade in his final year in 1984. And there was a bidding war between Jack Gibson, who was coaching Cronulla, who always wanted to get his hands on Olsen. He'd tried when he was a coach of Parramatta. He was trying again as coach of Cronulla, and they had agreed terms, but they were slow in sending Olsen a contract, and Artie Beetson came in with an offer. So Olsen got asked. Olsen and his partner were taken to the very plush Eastern Suburbs rugby. Olsen talks about the leather couches on the top floor.
No secret cafe somewhere, just the foyer.
No long hair allowed at the time, which disqualified.
Was that Ron Jones, who used to have the band on the hair over the collar? Yep. Russell Fairfax and Ian Schubert were beside themselves.
It was 10 kilometres away from the old Balmain leagues, but demographically 10,000 miles. And he got up there, and Ron Jones must have known some of the complex parts of Polynesian culture, because he produced $15,000 in cash and took Olsen into the office and put the money counter that counted it all out. And Olsen said to a Polynesian sending money home, that was intoxicating. Seeing that machine.
A bit of a low shot, is it?
And he said,
what year was this?
And it is late 84, early 85.
So 15 grand's a lot of money.
You could buy a house in Ryde where he bought for $70,000, and his contract was 35. So he was on for a 1 year salary, and they were paying double what Cronulla was paying.
Wow.
For a 1 year contract. And Olsen got offered an armed escort down to the car park and sent most of that home.
Wow.
It's an extraordinary book. I love the fact that you sort of resolve it around that he is the galloping Garbo, and he is Sydney's longest serving garbage worker, correct?
He is. There's no one been serving longer than Olsen.
Where is he living now, Patrick?
He's living in Balcombe Hills.
Okay. So what happened to the family over a period of time? Partners, brothers, sisters, cousins, did they come and join, or was there any repatriation, so to speak?
All family stayed in New Zealand except for Leslie, his amazing partner who's been there through thick and thin.
Yep.
He's got 3 kids. One, sadly, John gets out from Silverwater, or happily gets out of Silverwater. And John was quite a promising young footballer, but I went into Silverwater Jail to interview John for the book.
Wow. First time?
that I can speak of, yeah.
I can't remember my time there.
I once had a long holiday in there.
First time as a visitor.
First time not wearing green.
There are great stories about Olsen's family, particularly his mother. You pile on a rugby union, which makes the Empire in Star Wars look like the good guys, the sport of rugby union. You know, the Anglo-Saxon farmer. No wonder I hate rugby union. I also love that it's probably the first book I've read that sort of quotes authoritatively from the one-eyed tiger who writes the column in the Inner Western Weekly Times. He is one of my favourite writers of all time.
The longest-serving league journo, and his use of cliche is magnificent. And he's a constant reminder of how funny rugby league is.
Yeah.
The fact this show exists and it provides humour. I mean, you have to go a long way to find anything funny in the A-League.
Yeah.
Or anything funny in rugby union, you know, that is of the humour that's dished up daily in rugby league. And the one-eyed tiger had so much to work with, and he's the rugby league writer for the Weekly Times that services the Ryde district, and he has been the happiest man that this book has been written.
Fantastic, yeah.
What do you want to come from the book? Is sort of in wrap up. What do you hope to? Because it's a tremendous story. It speaks to very much where the Pacifica community is going in rugby league and their role in the modern game. What is the legacy of the book that you'd like to leave us with? Two things I'd like to correct or put an argument forward that Olsen was a much better player than he is given credit for in the New South Wales Rugby League. A lot of people said he was a dud. The record tells a very different story. When he actually played first grade, he was devastating. The enigma, I'd like to kill that off. That's a lazy word and a very suffocating narrative because you never have to think about someone again. You're seeing it right now with the Rocks and Diamonds stuff that's levelled at Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah.
On the other side is an understanding of this group that has completely upended our game that we love. They're not going anywhere, and the more we understand them, empathy is the vaccine to racism. It's very, very important. And if we understand this new group, we can actually celebrate it because International Rugby League, through this group of players, we can have a World Cup in maybe 2029 where we can genuinely have 6 teams that can win. And our game has suffered with State of Origin being the premier form of the game and everything being subordinate to that because it's perverted some decisions of players that would actually pay for their grandparents' countries and bring so much pride. I look at what has gone on with Tonga, Fiji.
So what sort of format would you like to see as far as international game sort of situations?
Well, just the fact we have 16 teams for this World Cup is fantastic. Tonga, for the first time, a Pacific team is heading a pool. So they're not it's not a group of death for every outing for those guys. They always shove the Pacific teams together, which is great to watch a 500-year-old blood feud playing out on the rugby league field in front of us. But it's not good for the game because everyone gets the saloon passage against France or Ireland, and these guys thrash each other. But I'd just like, because the joke's always been that it's 2 provinces in England, a couple of towns in France, 2 states here, and South Auckland is the international game.
New York City.
And it's spreading, the Wolfpack. I've got my Wolfpack polo coming in the mail.
Hello, Steve Mascot.
Trapped at Heathrow Airport. I check the tracking every day, and it's not moving, but it's coming.
Great.
So
it's the Big O, Pacific Revolution Pioneer. The website is?
thebigo.kiwi.
But please tell me it's available in all good bookstores, Patrick.
It's available in all good bookstores. There's 40 bookstores in Australia. It's number 4 in New Zealand in Whitcool. It's selling like hotcakes there. We're behind Michelle Obama, but in COVID we've just got to
we're
wear
all behind
that.
Michelle Obama, I think.
And will Olsen do any publicity?
He's been doing lots of publicity, lots of interviews, and a couple. What's really sort of third thing that's thrilled me is Olsen was the most elusive quarry, the most reluctant. If you've read The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, there's the reluctant hero sets out on a quest, faces the road of trials, slays the dragon, and brings back the magic elixir for his people. And he conforms so beautifully to that. But it took me 6 months to convince him to do this because he didn't understand. And I said to him, if we do it, we have to tell it warts and all. It can't be a fanboy. So I had to tell that his father was a brutal tyrant who bashed the family. And I had to produce some of the sad bits, but that makes it more real.
Of course.
The Pacific community appreciates the truth in context. And he said to me, it feels like... Because I was always wondering, is he happy being dragged through this? And he said, I was a bit uncomfortable at the start, but now it's like a weight off my shoulders that my story's being told. Because the stories that are out here about him, he always thought were unfair. But if it was a biography and I asked Olsen to write it himself, it would have been 5 pages long. He's a man of few words. So stepping in as his storyteller is what an honour.
Denis wrote his autobiography and it is 5 pages long. Patrick Skene, thank you very much.
What about mine, Kris?
Well, they couldn't even publish that. It was rejected.
Because I'm all fired up. I'm all fired up and lonesome. I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm acting just a little too tough.